In the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maple Grove, life seemed idyllic. Children played on front lawns, neighbors waved hello, and the scent of barbecues wafted through the warm summer air. Among the cheerful homes stood one with a sparkling in-ground pool, a crown jewel of the neighborhood. It belonged to me, a sanctuary of solace, especially on blistering days where the sun felt relentless. But one fateful Saturday afternoon, everything changed. I had just slipped into the cool embrace of my pool, floating quietly in the shallows, when I heard a commotion. Suddenly, the splash of water jolted me from my relaxed trance. I squinted at the scene unfolding. The neighboring kids, 3 little whirlwinds led by none other than my nosy neighbor, Karen, gleefully cannonballing into my personal oasis. "Hey!" I shouted, pulling myself up to the edge. "Get out of my pool." Karen, who was leaning against the fence, barely spared me a glance. "They're just enjoying themselves," she hollered back, blissfully unaware of her indiscretion. It was as if she believed the entire world was hers for the taking. "Your kid should not be in here," I insisted, the tension rising as frustration bubbled within me. "This is my property, and it's not public access." With a steadfastness typical of her overbearing nature, Karen countered, "You may think it's yours, but as a member of the HOA board, I can tell you this pool is community property." I pinched the bridge of my nose, doing my best to remain calm. Karen's entitlement knew no bounds, but I refused to let her dictate my reality. "I've got a fence around it for a reason, Karen. Now, please call them back." "It's time to go," I pleaded, pointing toward the gate that stood locked. But Karen simply shrugged, a smirk plastered across her face. "My kids can stay as long as they like. You're not even using the whole pool." A wave of disbelief crashed over me. Did she actually believe that loud, boisterous splashes equal possession? Desperate, I turned my attention to the kids, who were now giggling as if the situation was some whimsical adventure. "Listen, guys, I need you to get out of here," I coaxed, hoping to reason with them. They looked at me with wide eyes but remained unmoved. "Leave my kids alone, or I'll have you banned from the pool." Karen shrieked, stepping closer, her voice dripping with menace. "Sure, go ahead," I challenged, fueling my resolve. "I'll make sure to gather proof that this pool belongs to me, and I will remind you that trespassing is a crime." The threat hung in the air between us like an uneasy silence as Karen's expression hardened. "You'll regret this, and I'll make sure that none of you can swim here again," she spat, her voice lowering as the animosity surged. Before I could respond, she turned on her heels, storming away, leaving the chaos of splashing children behind her. Heart racing, I gathered the colorful towels and inflatable floats that marked their entrance like breadcrumbs leading to a disgruntled witch's lair. At that moment, the police sirens echoed to the peaceful neighborhood, a deafening distortion of the idyllic scene that hung over Maple Grove just moments before. By the time officers arrived, the whispers of neighbors swirled like leaves caught in a sudden gust. The tension in the air thickened, and I felt my chest tighten with dread and exhilaration. "Ma'am, what's going on here?" Officer Reynolds greeted, his demeanor professional yet kind, an unexpected ally amidst this chaos. I explained how Karen's kids had intruded on my property, how they had seemed to take the plunge without a second thought, their laughter ringing in the unwelcome echo of my already frayed nerves. As I recounted my tale, I could see Karen lurking nearby, her arms crossed, foam seething beneath the surface of her cool facade. "She's lying. Her pool is public. I'm on the HOA board." Her screech echoed to the gathering crowd, and I braced myself for impact. "Ma'am, this is an enclosed pool. There's a fence," Officer Reynolds replied, gesturing to the very structure that Karen seemed all too willing to overlook, "and it stands as a clear indication of private property." In that moment, the dichotomy of our predicaments became painfully clear. Karen, with her airs of superiority, and me, the rightful owner of a peaceful oasis turned battlefield. I was armed with the power of truth, and I knew I would have to fight for it. "Ma'am," Officer Reynolds continued, turning his gaze to me while Karen fumed, "if you have any proof of ownership, that would help solidify your claim." I nodded, adrenaline propelling me forward, fueled by the necessity of defense. I have the paperwork inside. Please, let me show you. The world outside faded, engulfed in the fiery glow of determination. But before I could spring into action, chaos erupted. Karen lunged, a primal scream erupting from her throat as she approached, split seconds merging into unclear chaos. In one swift motion, she shoved me, the impact sending shock waves through my body, my back colliding painfully with the fence. "Get out of here! You're ruining everything." Karen screeched, her eyes wild with unholy resolve, the smirk now twisted into a terrifying grimace. The officers reacted quickly, springs of authority igniting them into action, pulling her away as a horrified gas of onlookers painted us in strokes of disbelief. My heart raced as a chilling realization dawned. This was no longer just a confrontation over a pool, but a battle for respect, for dignity, and for the sanctity of home. As the crowd watched, mouths agape, I took a stealing breath. This was just the beginning. As the officers pulled Karen away, her screams echoed in my ears, a disturbing melody of rage and desperation. My heart raced, the adrenaline coursing through me as I tried to catch my breath. The onlookers, the neighbors I had waved to, who now stood gawking at the unraveling chaos, watched with a mixture of shock and fascination. "Ma'am, we need to take control of the situation," Officer Reynolds said, locking eyes with me. His partner held Karen back, who was thrashing like a wild animal determined to escape. "Are you okay?" the officer asked, taking a cautious step toward me. "I'm fine," I managed, the adrenaline amplifying my voice, "but she just assaulted me. I want to press charges." I couldn't believe the words erupted from my lips, but they felt like the only power I had in this moment. "Let's get everything sorted out," Reynolds replied, motioning for me to take a step back. In that instant, a moment of clarity washed over me. This was my chance to reclaim not just my pool, but my peace. Karen, still howling, tried to break free. "You can't do this. You'll regret it," she spat, venom dripping from her words. I felt a surge of strength surging through me. "You had your chance, Karen. This is my home and my property. You don't scare me anymore." The crowd murmured, the energy around us shifting. "Let's keep this civil, shall we?" Officer Reynolds urged, trying to defuse the situation as he held Karen steady. The other officer stepped forward, gesturing for her to calm down. "You were trespassing, and your behavior is unacceptable." As she leaned into the officers, still red in the face, I noticed a glint of something sinister in her eyes. "You'll all see. I know people in the HOA. You're all going to pay for this," she screamed, inching closer to the line between ranting and threatening. Suddenly, amidst her chaos, a voice piped up from the crowd. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly resident 2 doors down who had often brought me cookies. "Karen has pulled this stunt before, hasn't she?" The comment hung in the air, drawing attention like the spark of a match in a dark room. "Yes," another neighbor chimed in, stepping forward. "She's tried to bully others, too. Don't let her intimidate you." The outpouring of support from my neighbors sent a tide of hope rushing through me. Maybe this wasn't just my fight. Maybe it was all of ours. "Thank you," I said, directing my gratitude toward them. I didn't want it to escalate like this, but I can't let her take advantage of me or anyone else. "All right, let's get the statements," Officer Reynolds suggested, and I nodded, my determination solidified within me. I turned, glancing back at Karen, whose face was twisted in dread and disbelief. "It's not over yet, Karen," I said, my voice low but steady. "I'm not going to let you bully me, and you'll be held accountable for this." Her smirk faltered, a crack forming in her iron facade. "You're making a mistake. Opie, you're going to regret this." Ignoring her threat, I took a deep breath, focusing on the officers as they began taking notes. I recounted the events with clarity, feeling the momentum shift in my favor. As I spoke, the crowd gathered closer, eager to hear what would unfold next. Just as I finished, another officer arrived, a sergeant with commanding presence. "What's going on here?" he asked, assessing the scene. "Karen here has assaulted Opie and has trespassed on her property," Officer Reynolds explained, his voice steady. The sergeant nodded, then turned to Karen. "You understand the severity of the situation, don't you? We have witnesses who have seen your behavior today." This is not the first time, and it won't be the last if you keep this up. Her eyes widened as her bravado faltered entirely. I was just trying to protect my kids, she stammered, her facade crumbling. I stepped forward, unwilling to let her manipulate the narrative. Your kids were trespassing in my pool, Karen. They were never in danger until you started screaming at me. The crowd murmured again, and I could see the weight of her actions pressing down upon her. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable as they processed the whole scene. Let me remind you, Miss Karen, resorting to violence is never the answer, the sergeant intoned, his voice a heavy anchor. Your children deserve a better example. She fell silent, momentarily defeated, and I could see the realization settling in. People believed me. I wasn't alone. Afterward, the officers asked us to stay put while they assessed the situation with their supervisor over the radio. Tension hung between us like a rope stretched taut, and I could feel the anticipation thrumming in my veins. Just then, the doorbell of my home chimed, cutting through the chilly air outside. I hadn't even realized it had been ringing until a familiar face appeared on my doorstep. Bill, the HOA president. From my spot, I could see the curiosity in his eyes as he navigated the scene with purpose. What in the world is happening? He asked, concern painting his features with urgency. Just a minor neighborhood dispute, Karen snapped, her eyes narrowing on him. Not so minor, I interjected, my voice unwavering. Karen tried to assault me and then claimed my pool was community property. Bill's gaze shifted between the three of us, weighing the gravity of the situation. I was just about to have a meeting discussing community guidelines. This certainly falls under that purview. Don't you dare involve the HOA in this. Karen shouted again, desperation leaking through her bravado. I held my ground, knowing this was my moment. I think you've already involved yourself, Karen, I said, my pulse quickening. And now it's time for the board to address your actions. As the officers resumed taking notes, the tide continued to turn in my favor. It was no longer just about my property or my pool. It was about making a stand against entitlement and manipulation. And I was ready for whatever came next. As Bill stood at the threshold, the tension crackled in the air like a storm waiting to break. My heart raced with the thrill of imminent confrontation. I couldn't help but feel that this moment could finally tip the scales in my favor. Let's clarify, Karen, I said, my voice firm. You can't just waltz into my backyard, let your kids trespass, and then think you can threaten me without consequences. Her gaze darted between Bill and the officers, desperation clawing at her. You're making a spectacle out of this, she hissed, the facade of confidence cracking. I'll get the HOA to back me up. You'll see. Bill took a step forward, the weight of his authority palpable. Actually, Karen, I think it's time we address your behavior overall. This isn't the first time I've heard complaints about you. Your actions could jeopardize your standing on the board. Her face paled. You wouldn't. I've been on that board for years, Bill. You can't just kick me out. Watch me, he countered, his voice steady. The crowd behind us began to murmur, the fact of a rising rebellion against Karen's reign shifting the atmosphere from fear to empowerment. Officer Reynolds caught my eye, a silent nod assuring me that I was winning this battle. We've received statements from your neighbors, and they back OP's account, he stated, his tone unwavering. Your emotional outbursts and aggression are documented now. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable? Karen scoffed, the last vestiges of her composure crumbling. You think they care about you? They'll turn on you too. That's not true, said another neighbor, stepping closer, anger quivering beneath their calm facade. You've bullied enough of us. We're done being afraid of you. I could feel the swell of unity behind me, a tidal wave ready to wash away her tyranny. This is about holding you accountable. I chimed in, grounding my voice. You've mistaken kindness for weakness, Karen. You've mistaken our silence for compliance. Her eyes narrowed, anger mixing with realization. I'll destroy you. You have no idea who you're dealing with. In that moment, the air shifted again, a growing whisper of resistance. And you have no idea who we are, someone in the crowd shouted. The reaction was electric. A wave of affirmation surged through the crowd, a collective rallying cry against her oppression that made my heart soar. Bill turned to the officers. Let's escalate this. I think it's time we file formal charges against her, not just for assault, but for her behavior in the community. Abruptly, Karen's defiance turned to fear. You wouldn't dare, she shrieked, desperation seeping into her tone. Try us, Officer Reynolds said, and the chill in his voice was unmistakable. Your actions today are filmed. You won't get away with this. Bill turned back to me, an understanding glimmering in his eyes. I'll personally ensure every violation gets documented, he said firmly. This is only the beginning for her. I felt a mix of vindication and hope. This was my neighborhood, my home, and I wouldn't allow Karen's tyranny to take it from me. With everyone united against her, the walls she'd built around her hostility began to crumble. Let's take it a step further. I proposed, a sense of daring coursing through me. I want her banned from this community pool. No one should have to worry about her manipulating the space again. The crowd murmured in agreement, a chorus of supportive voices echoing my sentiment. Yes, get her out of here. Karen's face twisted in disbelief, realizing she was losing her grip. You're going to regret this. You'll see what I can do. As the officers moved to apprehend her, a sudden thought struck me. With the power of the community behind me, I needed to deliver a final blow, a piece to resistance, if you will. Karen, I called, loud enough for the gathered neighbors to hear. It's time you learn that actions have consequences. You're not just fighting me or these officers. You're up against an entire community that refuses to bow to your intimidation. This pool is my sanctuary, and from today on, you will find no sanctuary here again. Your threats mean nothing, she screamed, but the trembling in her voice betrayed her facade. She knew she'd lost. Forget threats. We're taking action, I declared, watching as the officer stepped forward, preparing to lead her away. The realization of what was happening washed over her, panic igniting in her eyes. Just as the officers placed the cuffs on her wrist, a breath caught in my throat. And Karen, I added, do tell your friends at the HOA that this community stands united and we will not be silenced. Consider this your last warning. With that, they led her away, and I could feel the energy shift around me. My neighbors began to cheer, their voices a roaring chorus of support and victory. As I glanced around, I saw faces filled with relief and vindication, a sense of belonging that transcended any threat from Karen. For so long, I had felt isolated in this fight, but I realized today that I was never alone. In the twilight of that summer evening, as laughter echoed around the pool and neighbors embraced each other, I recognized a pivotal truth. Sometimes you must stand your ground, not just for yourself but for those who cannot. This was more than just a pool. It was a testament to resilience, unity, and the unstoppable force of community unwilling to tolerate abuse. And just as I was starting to relax, a new message pinged on my phone. A notification from the HOA's group chat. New bylaws being drafted for stricter conduct. Starting today, I smiled to myself, a thrill sparking in my belly. The fight may have ended today, but the battle for my peace, and the peace of this community, was just beginning. And as I gazed at the sparkling water under the fading sun, I knew one thing for sure. I would always fight for what was right, and I would never back down again.